Hi all, this is Miss Davis with a little rundown on the introduction section. The graphic organizer that I have kind of included is very useful as far as showing you how each part of the research paper fits together, but I also want to take a few minutes here to kind of walk you through an organizational structure that has really kind of worked for me. So we're going to be looking today at the introduction, right? Okay, now the introduction section of your paper is actually two kind of things in a row. Okay, I'm choosing colored markers because why not be pretty, right? All right, so we're going to have two parts of your introduction that get kind of spliced out here. The first section is going to be kind of the traditional introduction, kind of like a normal paper. Okay, and then there is also a literature review. So for the purposes of this class, we will be referring to these interchangeably. The introduction means the whole section between the introduction and the lit review for our purposes, okay? Now, this section here is what looks very much like your IWA did last year. So you kind of know where we're headed with that piece. What I want to take a look at is what I call a funneling technique, and this has been helpful even with some of my fellow grad students in helping them learn how to kind of address their first paper. So the paper is going to kind of look like an hourglass when all is said and done with a real long middle section. Okay, so this starts building that top section of the hourglass, okay, and it's going to look like a very odd funnel. Okay, so your introduction is kind of this big part here, and then your literature review will funnel down toward something much smaller until it gets to a point where it will, right here at its smallest part, be your research question. That's what the first part of the paper is, okay, is building to that research question. So what's going to happen is, in all honesty, the actual introduction part of the introduction is the last thing I write on a paper because I find it really hard to write this until I know where my paper's going. I want you to get something on paper though. Okay, just get something started for this. It may not look anything like this when we have your final draft of the paper, and that's okay. I want you to get started. It's going to be a process. It's going to be months and months and months of process. So we just need to get started on it. And so having a draft of an introduction for your paper is where we need to be. But it's going to be really wide. This is where I tend to address kind of like things like current interest, okay, or like a major past event, a personal connection could be up there, something to draw the reader in. Okay, so something there to start us out on the paper as far as in a 2020 environment when yada 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 is happening, such and such becomes more and more important is kind of what we're looking at here. Okay, this can also include like your goal, what do you want to learn from it? That can be part of that personal connection. And also toward the beginning up here somewhere, we would also like you to address, let me add this in blue, your kind of initial thoughts, your initial hypothesis. This is an overstatement. I'm just going to literally put initial thoughts on that topic because you probably don't have enough information to actually generate a hypothesis. I've completed a master's degree and I've never generated a hypothesis. I have initial research assumptions. I have thoughts about where something might go, but I have never built up to a point of having enough background information to have a hypothesis yet. So I wouldn't phrase it that way. Initial assumptions are a good place to go. Initial thoughts are a good place to go. Okay, then after that kind of broad introduction, we're then going to use the initial thoughts piece to transfer into the literature review. This is a good place for that to be a transitional idea. If you start with like the current state of the field, current interest, talk about any major events that have been recent, what is your personal connection, and what are your initial thoughts, that becomes a good transitional thought moving into the literature review. So the lit review itself, again, is going to be very, very much like the IWA. So during this funneling piece, we want to look at as much information as we have in the field. So we want to start with the field. And you're going to address studies. Okay, so in the field, you're going to have studies, and you're going to crap them. Okay, and what we're looking for here is the reliability piece in a study. So it doesn't have to be a full on going through all of the elements of this, but you need to establish that we should listen to the study for a reason. Who is the person who's conducting that study, and therefore why should we listen to them? Okay. Then, I just realized how fuzzy the screen is. Let me see. Oh, that's prettier. There we go. Okay, so we're summarizing studies. We're crapping. You want this to be conversational. Okay, you want to put the studies in conversation. Again, look at those kind of conversational pieces on the Lesson 4 handout. That's very, very useful as far as some phrases that you can use in here to allow you to craft this in a more efficient way. So you want to establish that the early thoughts were this, but then so-and-so conducted a study that changed this thing, and that changed the conversation. Now these 3 people said this in response to that. You want them to be different perspectives in a conversation with each other. And after you kind of like get the field narrowed down, then you're going to want to aim more toward your specific topic. And then it'll be pretty much a similar thing here, that you're also then putting studies related to your topic together. You're making those go into conversation with each other over the course of this. And slowly but surely, as you hone that down, you may include methodological pieces there. That depends on which field you're writing for. Some of them include method in their literature review. Some of them include method a little bit later on in the method section. But if you find a method you like, go ahead and start in on that section before we even get to method is fine in the lit review up here. What you want to then do when you start heading toward the research question piece of the puzzle is you want to establish the gap. Okay, so what that means is we need a statement in there that says that although all of these parts have happened, we have not yet studied this one thing, and here's why it's important. So there's a gap. We've framed it with all of these other studies. None of these studies are going to actually address your research question. If they do, you can't do your study. Okay, all of these are instead going to show that nobody has addressed your research question. They're going to be all of those pieces around it. So for instance, in my Hamilton paper, no one had answered it. So my literature review includes some facts that some people have refused to speak about it. It includes the fact that Philippa has done interviews and has never honed it down. It includes the fact that Lynn has annotated that musical 20 Ways from Sunday and has never addressed the question of the last 5 seconds. And in fact, he's refused to do so on several occasions. It has framed it with other musical studies, etc., in order to show that while no one has addressed this, they've pieced the pieces together here. And this is important because, and I point that back up toward my current interest piece, especially in Hamilton, because at that point in time, for sure, that show was just starting in Chicago. And so there was a renewed interest in the Midwest for it. So this is important because the show is so important to our current society and therefore makes it something worth studying. There's your introduction. Okay. Now I say it will end up looking kind of like a reverse hourglass because your study will fit in here with an elongated section. Your study will fit in here and it will stick under that research question, your method, your results, your discussion. Then what will happen eventually is we will kind of do this number, okay, and turn it upside down. And you'll return back to the research question. You'll broaden it out with discussions of the significance of the results, your limitations, your strengths of the study, and the eventual implications. And then up here where we were kind of establishing your area of interest, then we'll be reflecting on the research process, how this impacts the field that you're in, and the conclusion. All of that will reverse funnel when we get to that point. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, but for right now, I want you to focus on the top half of the hourglass. Okay, now, I know many of you are like, but I'm not that far along. I understand. This is a draft. You will have several drafts of this piece. You will probably still be revising this piece in March. Okay, it probably will still be a thing at that point in time, and that's fine. Whenever I bring out my existing studies, the first thing I do is look to see how much of the lit review I need to revise. And if I were rewriting Hamilton right now, there are things I would need to add and address in that. The Chicago production has closed. Broadway is dark right now. The show has come out on Disney Plus. There are many elements of that I would need to address. Lynn has flat out said a theory is wrong right now. So that's important. Philippa is said to have addressed the question. I don't think she still has. And so there are things that I would need to add back in to shape around the piece here in order to reframe the paper. And that's what this does. This sets the stage for your study and your discussion of its significance and why it matters. Because that so what piece is important. You're going to be arguing a lot from this place forward. So what this does is it makes the case for the fact that no one has studied your topic before, and here's why we need to. Those are the things that we're kind of looking for within the realm of the top half of that funnel. All right. I will close with the following thought. I think I've said this before, and I will say it again right now. There is nothing in the world probably more intimidating than that. You know you've got a task before you, and a blank sheet of paper or an empty Word or doc file sitting staring at you in the face, and you don't know where to start, and you're sure you're going on the wrong direction, and. The very best thing I can say is that. Make a mark on a sheet of paper. Get the process started. That mark doesn't have to be there when you're done. It can be something completely other when you get done, but you can't improve until you start. I will be giving some whole group reactions to the first draft of lit reviews. In order for those to be effective, I need this first draft to be an effort. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want you to try real hard at giving us that funnel piece. Because if you don't make a decent mark on the sheet of paper, I don't have very much to refer to. But if that mark is there for you, then I can talk specifically about some of the things that we need to shift for draft 2. Okay, so that is where we are at this point. Please feel free to reach out, give me a call, all that kind of fun stuff. If you get stuck or you need to run an idea past somebody, that is fine. You can use each other. You can reach out to each other as well. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks so much.